Today we are going to study one of the most important concepts of new criticism, and a concept that examiners love to ask, that is tension in English literature. Please remember, tension does not mean stress or anxiety like in daily life. In literature, tension is something intellectual, structural, and meaning-based. By the end of this lecture, you will clearly understand what tension really means, why great poems cannot be simplified, and how this concept helps us write high-scoring exam answers. So let us begin step by step. What is tension in literature? When we say tension in literature, we are talking about the interaction of opposite forces inside a text. These opposites can be ideas, emotions, meanings, or even structure and form. Very important point here. Tension is not just conflict in the story. For example, a fight between two characters is conflict. But tension is deeper. It is when contradictory meanings exist together. Let me give a simple example. Imagine a poem talking about death, but in a very beautiful and calm language. Here, the subject is dark, but the tone is peaceful. This opposition creates tension. Key idea to remember for exams: a great literary work does not solve contradictions easily. Instead, it holds opposite meanings together. Origin of the concept of tension. Now let us understand where this concept came from. The term tension was first used as a technical critical concept by Tate in 1938. His famous essay is titled, Tension in Poetry. But remember this clearly. Tate introduced the idea, but it was Cleanth who systematized and popularized it. Cleanth most important book is The Well-Wrought Urn, 1947. For exams, Tate right-pointing arrow introduced the term. Cleanth right-pointing arrow developed it into a full theory. This distinction is very important. Intellectual and historical background. To understand tension properly, we must see why it was needed. Earlier critics used approaches like biographical criticism, historical criticism, moral criticism, but new critics rejected these approaches. Why? Because they believed, if you explain a poem only using the poet's life, or history, or moral message, you destroy the poem's complexity. They also strongly opposed paraphrasing poetry. Why? Because when you paraphrase, you remove contradictions, and when contradictions disappear, tension disappears. This leads us to new criticism. Rise of new criticism, 1930s-1950s. During the 1930s to 1950s, new criticism became dominant. New critics believed, a poem is an organic whole. Meaning comes from internal relationships. Contradictions are not mistakes, they are essential. This is why new critics loved paradox, irony, ambiguity, and all these depend on tension. So remember, without tension, there is no poetic depth. Definition of tension. Standard exam definition. Now we come to the most exam important slide. Tate defines tension as the total meaning of a poem resulting from the interplay of denotation and connotation. Let me explain in simple words. Denotation is literal meaning. Connotation is emotional or symbolic meaning. When these two meanings do not fully agree, tension is created. Cleanth adds, tension happens when opposing meanings are balanced, not resolved. For exams, always remember, tension is the balance of opposites creating unity. Types of tension, very important. Now we move to the most frequently asked exam area, types of tension. First type, tension between denotation and connotation. A word may look simple literally, but emotionally it suggests something deeper. Second type, tension between opposing ideas. Examples: life versus death, love versus hate, faith versus doubt, order versus chaos. Important point, these ideas coexist. One does not cancel the other. More types of tension. Let us continue. Tension between form and content. For example, a strict sonnet form expressing violent emotions. Calm rhythm describing tragic suffering. Shakespeare's sonnets are the best example. Tension between speaker and meaning. The speaker says one thing, but the poem suggests another. This creates irony. Structural tension. beginning versus ending, image versus idea, statement versus counter-statement. Exam tip: mention at least 2 types with examples for full marks. Tension versus related terms. Students often confuse tension with similar terms. Let us clarify. Tension is balance of opposites. Core concept. Paradox is self-contradictory truth. A tool. Irony is opposite meaning. A result. Ambiguity is multiple meanings. Conflict is external struggle. Golden exam line. All paradoxes create tension, but all tension is not paradox. Tension and organic unity. According to new critics, a poem is like a living organism. Every word contributes to tension. If you remove even one element, the tension collapses. That is why Cleanth called paraphrasing the heresy of paraphrase. Because you cannot summarize a poem without losing its tension. Major practitioners and critics. Now remember these critics carefully. Alan Tate introduced tension. Cleanth is the central theorist, paradox and unity. John Crow Ransom gave poetic structure and complexity. W.K. Wimsatt gave verbal meaning, intentional fallacy. Literary texts where tension is central. Examiners love text-based examples. Metaphysical poetry. John Donne. Love versus religion. Body versus soul example. The canonization. Shakespeare. Appearance versus reality. Order versus disorder examples. Hamlet. Macbeth. Sonnet 18. Romantic poetry. Ideal versus real. Nature versus civilization. Modern poetry. Faith versus doubt example. The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. Tension in drama. In drama, tension works differently. It exists between dialogue and subtext, between action and motive, between tragic and comic elements. Shakespeare's tragedies are built on continuous tension, which keeps the audience emotionally involved. Unknown but important exam points. These points give you an edge in exams. Tension is not psychological stress. Poems with single meaning lack depth. Tension increases rereadability. New critics prefer closed texts. Tension explains why poems resist summary. These points are excellent for 10 to 15 mark answers. Criticism of the concept of tension. Finally, let us see criticisms. Later critics argued, reader response is the meaning depends on reader. Marxists ignores social reality. Feminists hides ideology. Post-structuralists is meaning that is unstable. But remember, for exams, new critical tension is still canonical and valid. So always answer from a new critical perspective unless asked otherwise. Before we end this lecture, remember one very important thing. Great literature is not great because it gives us easy answers. It is great because it teaches us how opposites can exist together. That balance, between idea and emotion, form and feeling, clarity and mystery, is what we call tension. Whenever you read a poem or a play and feel that it cannot be reduced to a single meaning, whenever it resists summary and invites rereading, you can be sure that tension is working there. For examinations, always remember, tension is a new critical concept. It is structural and semantic, not emotional stress. And it is the key to understanding organic unity in literature. If you master this one concept, you will automatically understand paradox, irony, and ambiguity, and your answers will stand out from the rest. If this explanation helped you, revise it once more, apply it to texts like Donne, Shakespeare, and Eliot, and you will never fear this topic again. Keep reading deeply, keep thinking critically, and remember, great literature never chooses one side, it holds both together. Thank you, and happy learning. Please like, share, and subscribe if you find this video useful.